Halal certification is around a $2 trillion industry, and worldwide we are all chipping into it. Don't believe me? Well, believe the Halal Certifiers who've written a comprehensive report about it. So here's the report. State of the Global Islamic Economy 2016 to 17. You can see that it's been produced by Thomson Reuters in collaboration with Dina Standard, the latter being an Islamic company. And it's been supported by Dubai, the capital of Islamic economy. So, straight from the horse's mouth. On the next page, you'll see a nice little picture of a mosque, which is appropriate because Halal certification funds Islam. So let's get into it. In the executive summary, we can see here that they have estimated that the Islamic economy was worth 1.9 trillion in 2015. By the way, that figure slightly differs from the ABC Four Corners report called The Truth About Halal, which estimated $2.1 trillion. So there's not a lot of difference there, though. ABC Four Corners said in a few years it should be going up to about $3 trillion. In any case, it's a lot of money either way. By the way, I know the ABC gets accused of bias, but I think that particular episode of Four Corners was fairly balanced and is definitely worth watching as it exposed a fair bit of corruption in the halal certification industry. So I would recommend that you watch it. After you've done that, I would suggest you watch the Q Society's latest doco about halal, featuring Kira Lee Smith. And here it is here. Now, just as a little bit of information, there are a few of us Aussies concerned about halal certification. The movers and shakers in this seem to be Kira Lee Smith, Pauline Hanson, and there's some others. They're in different political parties, and I'm separate to both of them in terms of I'm not in either of their political parties, mainly because I'm more left-wing. Unlike Kira Lee, I'm not religious, and in fact I have been critical of other religions. However, regardless of any of those differences, I do support and admire their work on halal certification and other aspects of Islam. And in fact, Debbie Robinson, the Q Society president, made the point that this shouldn't be a left or right-wing issue. It's an issue about human rights. And I really agree with that because I think Islam is a very oppressive religion and we should all be concerned that our grocery money is funding it. After you watch their doco, take a look at my website, which is called endgenderapartheid.com. What you'll find is that because we're all working separately, but at the same time we use each other's research as well, some information overlaps. Here's my website. But also we all have unique information to each other, so it's worth checking out all our sites. What you'll find here, for instance, I have information about a link between halal certification and female genital mutilation, but as that is the topic of a different YouTube video, I won't get into that right now. Right now we're talking about halal certification, Sharia by stealth. So we'll get back to the report. Now you can see here all the areas that halal certification has expanded into. I think we all know about food, but you may not have known about halal travel, halal media and recreation, halal pharmaceuticals and cosmetics, and halal education, and the list goes on. Now, halal food is a big one because Australia, as you can see here, is listed as second on their World Halal Food Indicator. Now, apparently, this evaluates countries based on the relative strength of the ecosystem they have for the development of the sector. In other words, how much they can fleece us by. So indeed, they state elsewhere that we've risen from number 4 to number 2. So you can see on this indicator we're actually ahead of a whole lot of Islamic countries, number 2 in the world. And even though we only have 2.6% Muslims in Australia, so that's pretty alarming. In fact, if you watch the Q Society's doco and the ABC Four Corners report, it verifies that the majority of our food appears to be halal certified. Keep in mind that very little of it is actually labelled as halal certified, despite a 2015 Senate inquiry into third-party certification that recommended labelling. Now, that particular recommendation had bipartisan support, by the way. Liberal, Labor parties, etc. Yet this still hasn't been acted on, which is why Pauline Hanson just passed a motion in the Senate to force the lower house to look at this. Because at the moment, the consumer has no informed choice, which clearly shows the whole thing is a raw anyway, because even Muslims wouldn't know what to buy. So also keep in mind that halal certifiers receive fees, often substantial fees, every time they certify something. So every time we Aussies do our grocery shop, we are chipping into this $2 trillion industry which funds Islam. But if you're not Australian and think this isn't a concern for you, well, you can see that there are halal food companies all over the world: Asia, US, UK, Canada, China, etc. Here they talk about Saffron Road is rapidly growing in the US. Crescent Foods above that. Euro quality lambs and so forth. So look, it's getting to the stage where nearly every grocery purchase in the world funds Islam. Mind you, we get told all the time that economies of scale absorb any halal certifications costs. So according to that theory, a $2 trillion industry that isn't costing any of us who chip into it. So there are people getting very rich, but apparently none of us are paying the price. Seems highly unlikely to me. And in fact, if you have a look at the rest of their report, on page 189, this is what they admit to. This higher cost is exacerbated by the fact that halal food suppliers are likely to pass on the cost of certification through higher prices. Well, that sounds like an admission to me that halal certification drives prices up. But regardless of what it's costing us, it is funding Islam, an oppressive, misogynistic religion which is responsible for a whole range of extremist acts in the world. But as I mentioned, it's not just food, it's travel, media, education, pharmaceuticals, etc. And in fact, let's have a further look into the other areas, halal pharmaceuticals being one. Within pharmaceuticals, there has been an ongoing push for halal certified vaccines, and in fact, the world's first halal vaccine facility becomes operational in 2018. But it gets worse, because on this page it says companies are gearing up to take advantage of the patent cliff in generics, with $148 billion worth of generic patents set to expire by 2018. So imagine you get your prescription or you go to hospital, and guess what? You might be funding Islam. And no doubt the halal certifiers will try to get PBS backing from the government or whatever similar scheme exists in various countries for the government to subsidise the costs of medicines. And by the way, they also mentioned in this report that there are already halal pharmacies. There's at least one in Sydney, there's others in other parts of the world, and there are halal certified hospitals. For instance, there's one in India. So yes, they've got their sticky little fingers in all the pies all over the world, whether it be pharmaceuticals, travel, food, education, you name it. But it gets even more alarming than this, because not only do they want to segregate men from women, but they also want to segregate the Muslims from us infidels. Because as you can see here, they talk about managing the commingling of Muslims and non-Muslim patients. Look, I could go on and on about the alarming things in this report, but I'd be here all day. So what I'd suggest, if you have a look at my blog, you'll find more information in general about this. I've also got information about a link between halal certification and female genital mutilation. But in conclusion on this particular topic, what I would say, halal certification is Sharia by stealth, and in the end it may prove as effective as terrorism in controlling us. In fact, considering that virtually all Australians are funding Islam through our weekly grocery shopping, and within a few years virtually every purchase everyone in the world makes will contribute to Islam, then we already know who our masters are. So please check out my blog and my other YouTube videos. Thank you for listening.